And so we want to break all of this down here with our friend, political analyst who's based in the state of California, Brian Sobel, and he joins me. Brian, so good of you to be with us here. I know we spoke just last week, last Monday night, a week ago, on the
Yes.
Iowa caucuses here. And, yes, New Hampshire and the primary is tomorrow, and we'll be speaking there. But this is a major race. I've been reminding so many of our viewers, it's not only the presidential election year, it's a year for elections to control the House, to control the Senate. And so this is going to be one of these key seats here. What are your overall impressions of the race so far there in California, and these four candidates as well?
First of all, when it became clear that Senator Dianne Feinstein was not going to continue, and then unfortunately she passed away, the governor had to take a decision about filling that seat in the midst of three Democrats already having committed to the race. And so that was a challenge for the governor. And I suspect that when he was making his decision about who he would appoint, even though it was publicly stated that he wouldn't hold them from running, I think the basic message behind the scenes was, you're going to be a caretaker senator because I've got three Democrat friends who have committed and are in this race, and so it makes it a marquee race, Andrew, in the nation, in my view.
Yeah, let's talk about as well, Brian. This is going to be a very expensive Senate race. Could be the most expensive we've seen ever. And Adam Schiff is by far leading on that front when it comes to fundraising. He has a lot of money in his campaign war chest, does he not?
He does. And I think a lot of the Democrat establishment have decided he is the clear front runner. He is in the polling as well, by the way. But that Katie Porter and Barbara Lee are not going to emerge. And, people in the political game, they start throwing their money behind the perceived winner. Now, what has happened here in California is the emergence of Steve Garvey. And Steve Garvey's, a different story. Forgetting that he's a Republican, he is a household name in California, and he brings to the table this independent status. Republican, yes, but more about I don't have a background in politics. He is on the ballot, or will be on the ballot, as a professional baseball representative. Don't know really what that means, but that's the designation. But what he's clearly trying to do is set himself apart from these three politicians.
Yeah, Brian, when you talk about Steve Garvey, he has so much name recognition. Obviously, California is the state of personalities, of celebrities. Who does he remind you of in California political history of the past? We were talking in the newsroom. Is it somewhat reminiscent of Arnold Schwarzenegger with that
Yes.
level of celebrity in the state? He's also a Republican. Does that bring to mind Schwarzenegger's run there in the early 2000s?
Absolutely. Whomever you were speaking with in the newsroom, I think that is the name that comes to mind.
Yeah.
And it's interesting in California to know that the California legislature has been dominated by Democrats, and all statewide offices have been dominated by Democrats for half a century. And the only people that break through on occasion are Republican governors. We go back to Pete Wilson, Arnold Schwarzenegger, certainly, and one or two others that somehow could provide what I think the people in California thought were checks and balances. So a Republican governor and a Democrat legislature, and so Arnold Schwarzenegger is the name that comes to mind when you say, "Hey, I'm a Republican, but I think I can win this state based on my personality and my independence and my wanting to go to Washington, D.C., or in the case of Arnold Schwarzenegger, I want to go to Sacramento, and I want to do the people's business without the parties being the controlling thing."
Yeah. Brian, we just spoke to Phil Schuman there from Fox 11 in Los Angeles. We were talking about the mechanics and the rules of the primary system there in California. So it's an open system. And so those four candidates are all competing in the same March 5th primary. And it's the two top vote getters, regardless
Right.
of party, who will advance to the general. So you're seeing a scenario in which one of these Democrats, maybe Adam Schiff, could be facing Steve Garvey, a Republican, come the fall here. That would be quite something, would it not?
It would. I believe that Adam Schiff would be fine with seeing Steve Garvey
Okay.
in the race. This is a political neophyte. He is not well defined politically in California. Doesn't really have positions that he has taken yet. He's got time, and people kind of like the idea that somebody from the outside isn't totally formulaic, that has all the answers, and so that makes Steve Garvey attractive to a lot of people. It's also true that Barbara Lee has an age problem. She's older. I'm not sure that California voters want to replace an older senator in Dianne Feinstein
Right.
with a younger but older senator in Barbara Lee. And Katie Porter is not a household name in California the way that Adam Schiff is from his time in the Congress going after Donald Trump.
Yeah. I'm reminded, too, I was looking this up. The last Republican senator, his name was John Seymour in the early 90s,
Yes.
who was appointed because I believe Pete Wilson stepped down because he wanted to run for governor. And correct me if I'm wrong there.
That's correct. And Seymour was somewhat again a personality that was outside the system to some
Oh.
extent. And again, to your earlier point, California seems to like people who come from some other industry, and that may not matter this year with Adam Schiff, but clearly in California history, that has been the case more than once.
Let's talk about Adam Schiff, too, and let's talk about how these Democrats might distinguish themselves. On the stage tonight, they have largely similar records. They do differ, on, trivia and semantics of these issues here. Adam Schiff, though, when you think of Schiff, you think of, and correct me if I'm wrong, you're more mainstream Democrat. He's been endorsed by former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Of course, that was a big endorsement. I had been watching late last year to see who would she throw her backing behind, and she did that with Adam Schiff here as well. So it seems like that will help him in all of this, will it not?
Oh, absolutely. I think you want all the endorsements you can get
Yeah.
from household names. Nancy Pelosi is a household name in California, across the nation, of course, but very much in California and very much in Northern California. And that's important. If you think about Schiff and Katie Porter, they don't have a lot of time and grade in Northern California. So receiving the former speaker's endorsement for Adam Schiff is a big deal. And so he's going to have money, and he's going to have the name recognition. He's perceived in California as a somewhat moderate. However, you're talking about California politics. California politics skews left, progressive left, and so he's moderate by those standards,
Right.
but not in the rest of the country necessarily.
Yeah, and to that point, though, Brian, so much so that Katie Porter, Barbara Lee have called into question his progressive bona fides sometimes here during this race, haven't they?
They have, but Barbara Lee especially.
Yeah.
Barbara Lee is very progressive. Again, well known in the San Francisco Bay Area, less well known in Los Angeles. Katie Porter again is more well known in Southern California, not very well known in Northern California, and so they're going to they have to attack Adam Schiff on his credentials, because otherwise, how do you take out the number one person, especially with the entrance of Steve Garvey?
Yeah.
Barbara Lee and Katie Porter know that Garvey has become the X factor here. Now we'll see after tonight's debate. Excerpts of which will run around the state on all the state media, and if Garvey doesn't do well, I think that'll be highlighted. But if he holds his own, that's something Porter and Lee are going to have to contend with.
Interesting, because, as political neophytes go, they're not always on a debate stage. So it's somewhat foreign territory for a political novice like Steve Garvey. We will see how he does. I mean, that's what I'm going to be looking for because I think a lot of people will be looking for whether or not he's going to be some type of spoiler in all of this. But when you kind of go back to Adam Schiff was censured this year on the House floor by House Republicans. Maybe he can use that to kind of shore up his progressive credentials there. Of course, Barbara Lee as well was somewhat in the mix for the LA mayoral primary in the race there. She was on the short list for President Biden, then candidate Biden for his running mate, I remember as well here. So it'll be interesting to see how this all unfolds and how they interact with each other. Brian, we got to take just a quick commercial break. We'll
Yes.
be getting into the issues, though, I think, when we come back, because Phil Schumann told us, so goes California, goes the country when it comes to issues. We'll see everyone in 2 minutes.